Today, I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Steve Goldman. Steve, how are you doing today?
Fine, Sal. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for presenting to our audience. So for those who are not familiar with Dr. Steve Goldman, he has 35 years of experience as both an expert and consultant in the areas of business continuity, disaster recovery, crisis management, and crisis communications. So he'll be walking you through our tabletop presentation. And with that, Steve, I'd like to hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Sal, and welcome everybody. Here's what we're going to talk about. After the introduction, we're going to talk about some practices for tabletop drills, getting the right people to the table. A very important part of your drill is the post-drill evaluation process. Then if the technology works, we'll do a walkthrough of the drill, some final thoughts. I'll turn it back to Sal for a final word from Everbridge. We'll do Q&A. I will summarize, and I expect a standing ovation from my audience at your cubicles. Okay, one caveat. No two medical facilities are the same, and even within an organization or facility, things can vary. So adapt this information to your specific organization, hospital, or situation. Very, very important. Okay, most of you should be familiar with the new CMS Emergency Preparedness Guidelines. They need to be implemented by November 2017. These are the regulations. You can look them up on your own. Under training and testing, you'll see that there are specific requirements for a training program, annual training, documentation, and demonstration of staff knowledge. For drills and exercises, or they call it testing, you have to do 2 exercises a year. One is a full-scale community-based exercise, and the other one is either another full-scale exercise or a tabletop. And you cannot get credit for actual events. You have to run drills and exercises. And third, and again, most important, is analyze your response. How did you do, and revise your plan and procedures. Okay, let's look at some best practices. Now, I could do a whole webinar just on drill best practices, but here are some key ones. First of all, why are we doing this? You know, we want to meet the regulations, but you want to define your goals for the tabletop. Second thing is make sure your participants are actual responders. A lot of executives say, I don't have time for this, I've got more important things to do, so I'll send the staff, admin, or a secretary. Not good enough. You need to have the actual people who will respond in a real event at your tabletop and at your drills. There's nothing worse than sitting in a drill for 2 or 3 or 5 hours doing nothing. So make sure when you develop your drill, it's a realistic scenario that challenges everybody present. That may mean multiple events all at the same time impacting different parts of your audience. Hey, that's the way it is. It's a drill. It is by definition a bad day at the office, so make sure you challenge everybody who's present. Now, I don't like to hear this from responders. They're very condescending. Oh, if this were real, I would do X. But for this drill, I'll do Y. That is not good. That means either your scenario is weak or the person saying that is not taking what you're doing seriously. If this were real, I really wouldn't activate the command center, but, you know, for the drill, I'll do that. Well, something is wrong either with your scenario or that person's attitude. So either of which need to be fixed. But I do want to hear from your facilitators, if this were real, what would you do? Give them the opportunity to tell you, yes, if this were real, here's how we would progress. And that's very, very acceptable. Facilitators or controllers guide and control. They don't lead participants. In other words, you set up the scenario, you set up the events, and let them respond. You don't tell them what to do unless they really dug themselves into a deep, deep hole, and you need to get them out. Now, this is kind of interesting, drill stop code. In hospitals in particular, you need to know when to stop the drill if a real event occurs, and some do code red, code blue, code 360, code 999, whatever you want to work. One of the more ingenious ones was stop the drill, which actually works extremely well. So again, have one of those as part of your drill briefing. Honest evaluation is, again, one of the more important things that we do because people know how they did. They know if they did well, they know if they did poorly, so provide an honest evaluation. We'll talk about that near the end of the webinar. But understand that they know how they did, so no need to sugarcoat anything. And finally, follow up promptly after the drill and make progress. I'll talk about this at the end of the webinar. Final thing is, please understand that most of your participants are volunteers, whether forced or otherwise, and so treat them with respect. Understand that they have real jobs to do, so to speak, and that they are there because either they want to be or not, but they're there, so treat them with that respect. And finally, for you, you can read the traits you need: flexibility, leadership, teamwork, a drug of choice, in my case, aspirin, and a positive outlook. Because if you don't believe in what you're doing, if you don't believe in this, nobody else will. So again, have that positive outlook. It's very important because you want to practice for a real event during a drill, making mistakes during the drill. Here we go. A lot of resources are out there. There's 6 websites you can go to find whatever information you need. Don't feel you're doing this in a vacuum. Okay, so there are a lot of resources out there. Feel free to look them up and work with them. Okay, so here's some pictures of drills that I just actually went to Google, said hospital tabletop drill, and these came up. Upper right is literally tabletop, a few people around a table talking through a discussion of what's going on. Lower left is looks like a table, a little tabletop with a facilitator at the front walking through scenario events, having people talk it out. Upper right, these people seem to be set up in their command center layout, which is good, which is what I recommend. And they walk through a tabletop, they walk through the events, talking to each other, getting them used to what it will be like in real life. And lower right looks like a large-scale Ebola exercise held, looks like in a large conference room. This is great. The more people can get to your drill, the more people will respond, the better off you are. Here's just a diagram, a very simple diagram for tabletop. On the lower, support team, HR, legal, finance, whatever, accounting. And the upper, your what I call business units, which in this case would be medical, nursing, ER, research, whatever your hospital or medical facility has, and led by the IMT leader at the top of the table. Now, this is a drill that I ran at a hospital system 2 or 3 months ago, and this was strictly their IT department. This was just the IT department, and you can see how large the IT department was, but we ran a drill just for IT of the hospital system. Now, if you look on the right, you see that we had a special table for compliance. When they found out about the drill, they wanted to participate. That's great. We asked media relations to be part of it because even though it was an IT event, it impacted the entire hospital and obviously outside impact, so we wanted media relations there. And facilities, who's in charge of the hospital incident command system, they wanted to see how we ran our drills. We will be invited to their drills coming up and eventually put the 2 groups together. So again, very good use of time for everybody involved. It looks large, it looks scary. It's really not. It's just your procedures personified. Now, this is important. Your drill objectives. If, as some people call them, your drill is a test, that's fine. But if it's a test, then your objectives are your test questions. But you also need to know the answers. So the format I like, there we go, is your objective, consider that your test question. How you satisfy the objective is your test answer. Then any limitations you have is how far you go to answer the question. Now this is going to be used in your evaluation report, and basically it's your test. We need to know the results. So here's a couple of objectives. Demonstrate staff knowledge of emergency procedures. Now, hey, this comes right from the CMS guidelines, so what a great objective to use. How do we satisfy this objective? Responders participate in the tabletop drill designed to challenge the emergency preparedness plan and procedures. And guess what? That comes from the CMS guidelines. Participation will be documented. And again, that comes from the CMS guidelines. A little more detailed, analyze the hospital's response to and maintain documentation of this drill. Lo and behold, right from the CMS guidelines. How will we satisfy it? Well, 1 and 2 are the same as the last one. And the third, a formal evaluation report and action plan will analyze hospital response. So there you go. That's what your objectives for the drill. When you generate this report, you'll satisfy that objective, plus meet the CMS guidelines. A little more detailed. If you're going to do a drill and you have a procedure for activating the drill, maybe you want to implement the procedure. So in this case, demonstrate the capability of the incident management team to mobilize in a timely manner on a real-time basis. So if your procedure says, we will do this within 15 minutes, that's great. And that's in your procedure. So that's a hard number that you can test to. So in this particular case, we're going to use the actual command center and the actual equipment. That's great. Demonstrate the successful implementation and use of the new Everbridge notification system software with a nod to our host. That would be the objective. How do we satisfy it? According to the procedure, we will follow the procedure and see that we've made successfully use it and that we met the procedure guidelines. Now, what limitations would we have? All communications must begin and end with "this is a drill." I cannot emphasize that enough. This is a drill. For this tabletop, we will use targeted contact lists 1 and 2. They are internal to the hospital only. So in other words, no external notifications outside the hospital system are to be made. That's the limitation for this objective. Hey, that's fine. That's what we're going to test. Demonstrate the ability for the security team to evacuate the emergency room. This won't be for tabletop unless all you want them to do is come up with the procedure and the process to evacuate, but don't actually evacuate the emergency room. For a larger scale drill, this might be a good objective on how we're going to do this. So for the tabletop, I assume that the security team will go into the actual emergency room, scope it out, see what's there, come back and develop a process. Well, a bunch of security people in the emergency room, not really a good-looking thing. So any interface with participants, they must know it's part of a drill. No one will actually be moved. And finally, I would recommend that in-field responders wear drill vests so people know that it's part of a drill. Too many bad things have occurred, which I'll share with you in a couple minutes. Okay, getting the right people to the table. Your tabletop drill should consist of responders, controllers, evaluators, observers, and non-participants. Responders are basically people from your plan, using your primary and alternates if possible. You only get them together twice a year, so I really recommend get the primaries and alternates involved. Controllers or facilitators, they ensure the drill proceeds as planned. They inject the pre-scripted messages. They watch the play. They make sure that non-drill events do not interrupt the response, record actions, etc. And what I like to use is my scenario development team as my controllers. Now, evaluators, just as it says, they independently observe the drill. They report with compliance, positives, negatives, and usually from audit or risk management. Now, what you can do is have the evaluator role be combined with the controller role. And instead of having two separate people, have one person do the control function, then afterwards write it up in the evaluation function. Observers would be there to watch the drill and response with your advance permission. So they request that they can watch the drill. You let them in, that's fine. They do not interact with the responders, only with controllers if you allow it. And if you want them to participate in the drill evaluation, kind of like as an extra set of eyes, that's fine. Non-participants, they're there. You want to basically keep them out of the way, but let them know it's part of a drill. So I always post signs like this, and I just pulled 2 off the internet, that we're having a drill training in progress, so people know that all the senior management in a room is nothing to be concerned about. We're doing a drill. If you're doing something that affects the hospital, say workplace violence, by all means post signs saying this is a drill, and we'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. You'll need a development team to help you with your drill, and based upon a scenario, you could get support from these groups, and these are in alphabetical order. So again, obviously medical staff, nursing staff, ER staff, if they're affected, then communications, and you can read through the list, will help you develop the drill. Externally, you may need support from the police, the fire department, hazmat, even the office of the mayor, as how they would respond as if it were real and what they would be doing in the drill. And I'll talk about that coming right up. Now, only in our business can we call natural disasters and pandemics typical events. But these are some possible scenario events that you could use. Natural disasters, human-caused emergencies, you can read through the list, technological disasters, public health emergencies. So again, you got the only thing you're limited by is your imagination and what limitations that you have with your objectives and your scope. Now, for hospital-specific, we could come up with events, shelter-in-place, relocation, feeding. How do we feed people when we have disaster? Using dedicated rooms or impacting dedicated rooms. You can read through the list. Most hospitals have an open campus with open spaces. There are visitors everywhere. This could lead to all sorts of drill-related mayhem. You can read through the list of employee scandal, a violation of regulations, depending upon how big you want the drill to be and where it's going. And then your specific hospital, the children's hospital may have different objectives and things to prove from a veterans hospital because it's made up differently. So again, this is what you'd want to do, specific research for a specific hospital and make it apply to the hospital that you're working with or on. Okay, now, when you're coming up with your scenario, please understand that you need to consider the response consequences. For example, if you do a kidnapping that will involve the local police and most likely the FBI, so you would need their input to a kidnapping scenario. What are they going to do? Workplace violence will definitely involve your local police department response, so involve them in your scenario and even your drill as to how they would work with your people. I have run many, many drills involving the local police department with the responders, and everybody comes out ahead. The police love doing it. They consider training and community relations, and the people in the hospital or management just really enjoy talking to the police and see how would you handle this, what would you do, and more importantly, what should we do? With your objectives and your scenario established, now work on your timeline, which is just this type of a format. Time, event, and any expected action. So a preliminary timeline might look like this. So in this case, we need something that drives the incident management team to activate, maybe an explosion in the emergency room. We don't know yet. Something in the parking lot. We also need to compromise the data center. So now all these ideas I'm putting down on paper. Initial conditions are sent out. Something should happen. It's very vague right now because we're in the preliminary timeline stage. Semi-final timeline might look like this. We've decided we're going to have a small explosion in the Roadrunner Hospital. You would set up the room. For tabletop, you wouldn't set up a room. You would just describe it. For a larger scale drill, you might even set up the room to look like it has an explosion. Send out your notifications. Now, at 8:45, you notice in the actions expected, if your facilities team or security team would generate, say, a damage report, then you should generate one for your drill because that's what they will be expecting, and that's what will happen in real life. Same thing with the status report. If that's part of your actual response. Tweets about the event, you know that 2 minutes after any event, Twitter's going to be abuzz with everything. So you might as well get people used to what it's all about early on and start injecting Twitter messages into your drill. And you can read through this about what should happen, about sending response, evacuate the ER. At 10:15, we say, okay, the data center has been compromised. They don't know why. Later on, they find out malicious agents in Russia have ransomwared your computer system. Not a pretty situation, not a great day at the office, but that will keep people busy all the afternoon. All right, and you can read through this, and you just go more and more detailed until you finally come up with your final scenario. Now, some logistics. Again, I could do a whole day on this. If you have a command center, even for a tabletop drill, use your command center. Get them people to understand what it's like to be in there and to use it as necessary. Now, hidden secret. If you feed them, they will come. So if your drill is going to start at 9 o'clock, if it's an announced drill or an announced training, at 8:45 you say we'll have donuts, bagels, fruit, coffee, tea, whatever available. If you don't do this, people start showing up at 9, 9:05, 9:10, 9:15. If you tell them the training starts at 9, but we'll have bagels and coffee at 8:45, people will be there at 8:45. Trust me on this. Also, we want to have maybe plans available, placards with people's names and titles. Interesting, I have wastebasket in red. I've done drills all around the world, and for some reason, a lot of conference rooms do not seem to have wastebaskets. Don't know why. Maybe some facilities people know why, but they don't. So make sure there's wastebaskets in, otherwise you end up with a table full of stuff. What else does your plan say you'll have in your command center? Phone chargers, video conferencing, a conference call system, books, pens, paper, whatever. If your plan says you should have it, you can put that in your conference room or your command center. Finally, I would recommend you provide people lunch. Go back to what I said about people being volunteers. So the least you could do is provide lunch for them, and based upon years of experience, do not provide a buffet-style lunch, because what will happen is people will congregate by the chafing dishes and forget about the drill. They'll chat about what's going on, and they may talk about the drill, but again, you just give them a box lunch back to work like it would be in real life. and carry on. Again, this is where experience comes into play. So you can use this format for your drill message, your drill injects. Again, for drill use only at the bottom, for training purposes only, these events did not occur. And then in this case, it's for the security manager in the command center. From the field, he's getting information that they just saw our car drive into a chemical truck in our parking lot, and then other events come to that. Now, when you do a large-scale drill, why not go out and actually do it? And here's an example of a drill I did years ago. We actually bought a car, put it underneath a truck, filled the truck with water, had some chemical soap something or other on the parking lot, so it simulated a chemical spill. And we had the emergency response team go in, actually combat this. We had injuries, etc. So again, this is realism. This is for a larger scale drill, not for tabletop, but I wanted to show you, that you're only limited by your imagination. Here are some Twitter messages you could inject. It just calls the Acne Hospital here. What's going on? Take pictures of it. Lower right. Spelling apparently is not a requirement for Twitter, so you can make it say whatever you want, misspell words on purpose, like I do, to make it more realistic. Okay, conducting the drill. I would do pre-briefings, and now think about this. You can say if your drill starts at 10, gather people together at 9 and do your annual training per the CMS requirement. Why not? Get it all done in one day. You might want to train your controllers and evaluators, train your responders on how we're going to run the drill, that they need to say this is a drill, we're only going to go so far, we're not actually going to shut down the data center, we're not actually going to go into the emergency room, it's all going to be contained within the command center. And I would present your leaders with leadership training on how to be a leader during a disaster, during a crisis, during an emergency. Those people have worked their way up the ladder using whatever skills they needed to use to get up there, but throw them into a command center, and they don't sometimes have the skills on how to lead a command center. So I always offer this to my clients and to anyone who wants how to be a leader during a crisis. Any setup you would do on drill day, start the drill either by messages, phone calls, Twitter, or whatever you want to input your drill. Again, as we said before, control the drill. Make sure that people don't go too far astray. And finally, when you've met your objectives, you've played everything out, then it's time to conclude the drill. Now, conducting a drill. I want to bring this up. You can read the headline, Nurses Sue Hospital over mock armed robbery in emergency room. There are a lot of consultants out there, a lot of good consultants, but a lot of not so good consultants. And this is run by a group of not so good consultants. They ran a drill in the emergency room. They dressed people up like thugs, and they broke in with guns in their hands, saying, we want drugs, we want money. They didn't tell anybody this is part of a drill. And so the nurses in the ER and the staff and the patients thought it was real. They thought they were going to die. So you'd think, my God, haven't people learned about this? All they needed to do was have someone come and say, okay, we're going to run a drill, put up a couple of drill signs, and let people go. Then it would have been fine. Now, you may say, well, that sacrifices a little bit of realism. Yeah, it does. But I'd rather have that sacrifice than what you see here for the lawsuits, the sheer terror that some of these people went through. So that was almost 20 years ago. Have people learned? In some cases, no. So you can see the headline from the Wall Street Journal. Some say simulation exercises can traumatize those taking part. Yes, it can if it's not run properly. If it's run by amateurs or people who don't understand the importance of letting people know about the drill. And then surprise terror drills pose danger to officers and the public. Okay, it's how you define the word surprise. Yes, again, you sacrifice some of the surprise and some of the realism so you don't scare the pants off of some of your responders. So again, learn from other people. All right, once you're done with your drill, you want to go through the critique process. And this is a personal item. Some people call their evaluations a hot wash. And that comes from the military, when people would take their guns and just run hot water through them and kind of hot wash the guns, kind of a quick and dirty way of cleaning off your firearm. Okay. And for those of you who took Latin in high school, what does post-mortem mean? After death. So do you want your drill to be thought of as a quick and dirty cleaning mechanism, or something considered after death. What you want to do is call it an evaluation. So from now on, all of you are going to call your drills drill evaluations, evaluations. When do you do it? For tabletop drill, right then and there. You stop the drill, maybe give people a break, then you immediately start to critique. You start everyone in a circle, when you're your front left person, and go all the way around the room, get everyone from your CEO to the secretaries. And then you get everybody's opinion, and everyone's opinion counts. Now, some pointers. You go around the room, but you have people not repeat what someone else said. So in other words, by the time you get to the right side of the room, maybe no one has anything new to add, and that's fine. You don't want to be there for 6 hours. The second thing is, like I said, if someone said something, you don't repeat it. And the more important thing is, during the evaluation, you do not want to solve problems. If you start solving problems in your critique or your evaluation, you're going to be there for, like, I don't know, 3 days, because people are going to argue about how to solve it. So just identify the issue. Here's the issue. We'll come up with the answer later. Let us move on. Because if you, as the controller, don't keep people moving on, you're going to be there for hours and hours and hours on end. This would be how I would set up my drill evaluation report. This is documenting everything as the guidance calls for. Introduction basically is your drill scenario, objectives, participants, again, documented. Then your evaluation of how the response. And finally, your action plan. I'm going to give you a great looking action plan, and there it is. It's called the stoplight chart. You may have heard of this. You have an observation, a recommended solution, somebody responsible, either a person or department, a completion due date, and then a colorful status. So red is not started, yellow is underway or on schedule, green is completed. This way you can sort by department, by completion date, by status, and get all these printouts on who's doing what and how far they are either behind or ahead of the game. Now, these three actually came from a drill I ran a couple of months ago. One of the issues was, should everybody have contact information on their cell phones? And HR said, no, that's private information. So instead of solving it there, we just gave that to HR to come up with a solution. The second one was, this actually happened, the IMT leader, incident management team leader, didn't declare the facility operational. It took him like 22 minutes. It should have been 15. That's the procedure. And what happened was he became focused on a problem, and he forgot to activate. So, okay, that was an individual thing. You know, it's not a big deal, but he needs to, the incident command system needs to understand that. And finally, this was interesting. The hospital staff wanted to use a hospital PA for some limited emergency communications. Nobody knew who owned the PA system. Facilities maintained it, but who was in charge of it? Nobody knew. Somebody installed it. There are microphones and loudspeakers all over the hospital, but nobody knew who was in charge of it. So that came out of the drill. So it was given to facilities. It's now their system, and how far it reaches, because in some areas of the hospital it didn't reach. In other areas, I'm sure it reached just fine. So who can use it right now? Anyone can access it. Anyone who knew where the microphone was, there we go. So this actually came up. Facilities now owns the PA system. They maintain it, and they're in charge of it. Again, something that helped operations as well as during a drill event. Okay, this is my favorite critique item. Officials blame God for chemical spills. If you can get away with that, more power to you. Okay, now we're going to attempt to do a bit of a walkthrough of a drill. So what we're going to do is walk through a sequence of events postulated to occur at a medical facility. I'll present the events. I want you to think about how you and your responders would react. If you're in a group setting, please talk among yourselves. That would be very good. Now, time is relative. I'm going to compress time and throw in time jumps. So what may occur over an hour is going to occur in 10 seconds. And what may take a lot of time to occur, nope, it's going to jump. We're just going to jump ahead. So we do have fast-moving events, and of course they are generic events. So we'll see how this goes. So it's going to be interactive. So we're going to use the polling tools of the webinar, and we'll get your input and see how things go. So now my answers are for generic situation. Answers on your planet may differ, and that's fine. Again, go back to what I said about adapting to the to what I said here to your organization. In a couple cases, there may be more than one correct answer. Okay, so let's do a test question. I'm going to turn this over to Sal.
Sure thing. So we're going to launch a poll right now as a test.
Okay, so make your choices. Choice number 1 is vanilla. Choice number 2 is chocolate. 3 is strawberry. 4 is another flavor. 5 is I don't like ice cream. Okay, the numbers are adding up. Let's wait a couple of seconds.
Sure thing.
Okay,
That's
folks.
Pretty good response.
Getting good response. Looks like chocolate's leading, but another flavor's there.
And let's close this poll.
How many people did we get?
79%.
Great. Okay, so they can see the results?
Yep.
Okay, so you guys can see the results. And 23% vanilla, 32% chocolate, 15 strawberry, 25 another flavor. And to you 4% that don't like ice cream, feel free to go to another webinar because ice cream is God's gift to mankind. The correct answer, of course, is chocolate, which is, of course, my favorite. Okay, so this system seems to work, Sal. Let us carry on. Okay, the events are set in the mythical Roadrunner Hospital. It's a mid-sized general hospital in a suburban setting. It's Tuesday afternoon. All is well with the world. Life is good. Let's see what happens. There we go. Okay. Event 1. An off-duty hospital IT employee, Julius Marks, enters the emergency room. He asks for ER supervisor Adele Atkins. Ms. Atkins goes to the desk, has words with Mr. Marks. The argument becomes loud. Again, this is in the ER. A security officer approaches the couple and asks them to quiet down. Mr. Marks takes a gun from his jacket, shoots the security officer. He then forces Ms. Atkins and 2 receptionists into a back room where he locks the door. Question 1. Who should call 911? Let's open the poll. Should it be senior management present, a security supervisor, the facilities staff, anyone witnessing the event, or for those of you familiar with a Porsche Model 911, the Porsche dealer? These are the results. Almost 90% of you said anyone witnessing the event, and 4, 3, and 3, the senior management, security supervisor, and facilities staff. Okay. My humble opinion, and you can check this with the police, but anybody witnessing the event should be able to call 911. I ran a drill about 6 weeks ago at a medical facility, and the security supervisor demanded, he was pounding the table, that he should be allowed to call 911 because he is security. And it got a very big discussion, and finally the CEO said, no, what's the policy? And the HR realized we don't have a policy. So you need to have a policy which says anyone witnessing the event should call 911 because that's the way it should be. You can't wait for senior management or security or facilities or anybody else to call 911. It's very, very important that anyone witnessing the event calls 911. Okay, good job, guys. Let's move on. Okay, hospital leadership has determined that the incident management team should be activated. That's fine. The emergency preparedness coordinator activates the Everbridge. What a surprise, the Everbridge notification system to notify responders that the IMT will be activated. Now, the incident management team leader has delayed activation because several IMT responders have not replied to the notification. So the IMT leader wants to use the hospital PA system to announce the activation of the IMT and get the people who have not reported on the emergency notification system. However, he is counseled not to use the hospital PA system because it will anger the perpetrator, and the perpetrator may do more harm because of it. So the question is, should the IMT leader use the hospital PA system to notify the missing IMT staff? Let's open the poll, Sal.
Sure, give me a second.
Yep. This is an amazing system because we're getting feedback very, very quickly, and the results are pulling up.
Let's So we'll give everybody a few seconds or so to answer this. We want to try to make sure we get as many answers as possible so everybody feels like they can participate.
Yep. About 2/3 of you have voted already. This is good. Okay, so you can read the results. Almost half of you said it depends upon the situation. And Sal, I need to...
Sure.
Click. Here we go. And I agree with you. It depends upon the situation and the reach of the public address system, but in this case, yes. I've talked to police, and I've actually got interesting results because some say, yeah, you might aggravate the perpetrator, but others say he or she is already aggravated, they've already taken hostages, they've already shot somebody, so you can't really make the situation any worse. And in this case, the perpetrator is an employee, so he knows you're going to be doing this anyway, so it should not be a surprise. But again, something to talk about with the police when you have them participate in your drill, okay? Those of you who don't have a facility-wide system, it's only 3% of you. Please consider getting one. It is an extremely valuable tool for evacuation, for notification, for everything in terms of communication quickly, facility-wide. Okay, good. Okay, the police department arrived. They set up what's called a forward command post just outside the emergency room ambulance entrance door. The police, once the area evacuated, that would be parts of the emergency room, evacuees are to go to the parking lot for questioning, and this is what's going to happen. The police department also wants a hospital representative as the liaison at the forward command post. So any information that goes to and from the police will go through the hospital representative. Question is, who should be the police department hospital liaison? Should it be the CEO, corporate communications, your incident manager team leader, facilities manager, or perhaps security manager? Let's launch this. Poll is now open. So you can see that 41% of you thought it should be the security manager, 24 IMT leader, 32 corporate communications manager. Okay, in my humble opinion, the CEO is going to be too busy to deal with the police department. It would be nice, but too busy. Same with the corporate communications manager and the IMT leader. They need to be in the command center leading or doing their jobs for the response. What are the police going to want? Facilities information, security information, diagrams of what's where, what the layouts look like, et cetera, et cetera. So I would recommend a facilities manager, or better yet, security manager. The police and security speak the same language. They know what each other needs. It'll help make their communications go a lot better. So again, I agree with the poll results. 41% for the security manager. I would go with that too. So now the incident manager team is activated and functional. We're jumping ahead in time. Twitter, as you well know, is trending hot with news about the shooting and the hostages. Ditto for other social media. And guess what? Your friends of the news media are sitting in the parking lot wanting information, and they want interviews with the executives of the hospital. Now, this is a question to you. For emergency communications, your agency has what? Do you have a public information officer and trained staff? Do you have maybe a couple of communications or marketing or PR staff? Do you at least have a public information officer? Do you use a contracted public relations firm? Or in the event of a disaster, do you pray and hope for the best? Let's open this up and see what we have. Okay, well, it looks like most of you, almost 50% of you, have a public information officer and trained communications team. Thank you. That is a perfectly right answer. If you have at least a couple of PR people or at least a public information officer, this is good. I do not believe in contracting out communications to a PR firm. You need to do this yourself. Your communications people are the face and soul of your organization. You don't want to contract that out. So again, use it in internal people. They can be trained. They don't have to be experts. They don't have to be perfect, but they need to be your people. And for the 7% of you who rely on prayer, I wish you well and Godspeed. Okay, now, in an event like this, you have some background, you have some luck, shall we say, in that the police own the area, they own the event. So for the first 2 or 3 or 4 hours, the police department public information officer will be the chief spokesperson for the event. They may call on you for information about like how many employees you have, how many departments, how old is the hospital, yada, yada, yada. But fortunately for you, the public information officer from the police department is in charge. He or she will take care of it. So now they're going to set up, now the police also want to set up a negotiator who is in telephone contact with the perpetrator, and the perpetrator wants $1 million in cash, a helicopter to the airport, a jet to the Bahamas, and for him and Mrs. Adkins. He says he will not harm the hostages if the hospital gives him what he wants. Now, so the police captain says to the hospital, you know, your staff, he wants all personnel records for the perpetrator and his hostages, and he wants them now. Now, your executive vice president of HR, Human Resources, says, oh, we can't give you that, and the chief legal counsel agrees. Say, we can't do that. That's confidential, private information, and some of it is protected health information. So the police wants personal, private information. Your staff says no. So you're the IMT leader. What is your decision? 1, give the police what they want. We'll figure out the legal stuff later. 2, the executive vice president of HR is correct. We're sorry, but we cannot provide this information. 3, compromise, release only redacted information. What would be your decision? And open the polls now. This is interesting. So 27% say give the police whatever they want. 19% say give, nope, sorry, it's legal, but we cannot give it to you. Over half of you say compromise and release only redacted information. That's kind of interesting. All right. The right answer is give the police whatever they want. You're in a hostage situation. People can be killed. One officer has already been shot. So do that. But I want you to understand, you are covered. The law says, and this is from the law, covered entities, which is you, may disclose protected health information to law enforcement officials in response to a law enforcement official's request about a victim or suspected crime of a victim. So you have your leeway out. You can give the police this information, and you're covered by the law. So again, in a tabletop drill, I'm not sure how many people know about this. The drills I run at hospitals, the answer kind of reflects the poll. Most of them don't. And I ran this one time at a hospital in California, and they gave answer number 2. They wouldn't give out the information, and I thought the police chief was going to kill a few corporate responders. And the result was give the police what they want. You're covered by the law, so you don't need to worry about that. So again, take this back. I'm sure this will be a great learning experience for your people. Okay, the perpetrator said he had a bomb in the IT area. If the hospital doesn't comply with his demands, within 30 minutes, he's going to set off the bomb. Who does the search for the bomb? The police department, hospital staff, a combination of both the police and the hospital. It depends upon the jurisdiction, or this is a job for the lawyers. Let's open this up. See what we have. Okay, so about half of you said the police will look for the bomb. So only 3% of you said the hospital staff, and almost 43% said it's a combination of the police and hospital staff, and 2% are not fans of the law, your law department. Okay, let's see what the right answer is. And I hate to be a weaselly on this, but the answer is it depends upon the jurisdiction. In New York City, for example, the police department will look for the bomb. In other jurisdictions, the police will not show up unless you tell them we have a suspicious package and point it out to them. And in other jurisdictions, the police and a hospital will walk with you through the facility to see what's going on. Look at this from a police point of view. They walk through and they see a backpack sitting next to the data center. They don't know if that belongs to, you know, some IT person who left it there, or it's a threatening package. So it depends. You've got to go out, you've got to talk to the police and talk to them on how they're going to do the bomb search. So again, another fantastic point you can get across. A lot of people don't know this, and when you do your tabletop, you should open up a lot of eyes, and a lot of light bulbs over people's heads should go off. Okay, So let's say the police negotiate with the perpetrator. He turns himself in. They release the hostages, and he walks out with his hands in the air. The police immediately arrest him. A small bomb does explode in the data center, and IT estimates it's going to take 24 to 72 hours just to recover the network and restore service to the laptops. Okay, this is not a question. It's more of a now what. So this is where we are. Perpetrators taken to the headquarters of the police. The employees are still in the parking lot. Hostages are being treated in the ER, but parts of the ER are in the parking lot. Parts of the ER are cordoned off for crime scene, which the police will own until they tell you otherwise. The data center is a mess, and by the way, it's shut down. IT is telling you 24 to 72 hours. If you can believe that, I go back to your prayer system. People are shaken up by the events. Police want to hold a joint news conference in 15 minutes. Social media is ablaze. So I would normally say what issues face the IMT, and I think you can see quite a lot. So for the next 2 hours, 3 hours, this is your drill, and they can just respond and come up with these events and what they're going to do and how they're going to recover, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you set up the drill, you train them a lot, and now we're in a situation where we can let them walk through the events, figure out what they're going to do, and interact, interface, and resolve the situation. So if you use this for a drill, right now you're at a good point to let it run for the next 2 to 3 hours to let them resolve what's going on. Okay, a couple of final thoughts. Strike while the iron is hot. The iron is going to be hot for about a week or two after your drill. After that, and that may even be a couple of days, people aren't going to care. They're going to say, gee, that was nice, let's move on. So what you've got to do is figure out what needs to be done, what support you need from whatever people you need, and get your action plan up and running, get approval to move forward. Do not squander this opportunity. This is a once or twice a year opportunity to get people's attention, to understand what you're doing, and get the stuff done and leverage it for the next exercise. Okay, finally, it does require work. 1 month, 1 to 3 months for a tabletop drill, even 6 months to a year for a large full-scale exercise. But I think it's one of the most satisfying things that we do. And I enjoy it. I love seeing people's the lights go off over their heads. You need management support, your desire to really test your program. We talked about attention to detail. You need to provide leadership and organizational skills. And coming up with a scenario, I think, is one of the most creative things that we do. And I have no doubt that you can do it. So get out there, read the guidelines, come up with a drill. If you have any one additional information, want to talk to me, get advice just to talk, no problem. There's my email or the email at the office. I have a website. It's not real. It is not a good website, but it's out there. So feel free to use it. So just give me a call, give me a chat, and we can chat. No problems. And now I'll turn it back to Sal. Sal, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. So again, we want to open it up to questions. Questions can be asked via the GoToWebinar interface. We're going to get to those in a second. I do want to just mention Everbridge really quickly. I promise that we will get to questions in a minute or two. Many of you on the line are familiar with Everbridge. Some of you are not. So, Everbridge is a global enterprise software company that provides applications to automate the delivery of critical information to keep people safe and businesses running, and that's really the key. We have a saying around here. We say that good communication is good medicine, and what we mean by that is for hospitals and healthcare facilities, we really do treat that delivery of critical information as key to treating your patients, keeping them safe in a lot of different ways. So really in three big buckets. So the idea of safety and security, communication around keeping your staff and patients safe during an emergency, around your IT systems. Keeping those up and running is critical to your ability to serve your patients and to deliver healthcare, as well as clinical communication, so really around the emergency department. So facilitating the delivery of critical information in the format of clinical communications, getting doctors to patients effectively and efficiently is another way in which we think, again, good communication is good medicine. We've talked about the CMS emergency criteria a couple of times, and there's changes coming. You're going to have to, hospitals, healthcare facilities are going to have to be compliant for November of 2017. For the first time, this incorporates emergency preparedness compliance issues. So how does Everbridge specifically as a software package help you meet the CMS criteria? Thought it'd be good to highlight some of these things. So one thing that's in the CMS criteria is you're going to need to be able to message everyone in your facility. Everbridge has the ability to let you meet that criteria. So, we send 30 million messages per week. Everbridge has the scalability and reliability to allow you to get everybody onto your system. You're going to have to run these drills, these exercises twice a year. Everbridge allows you to communicate via templates that you can launch that will complement any drills and exercises that you run. You're going to have documentation that you are compliant and you do have these capabilities, and Everbridge has the tracking and audit capabilities to allow you to accomplish this. IT systems in particular are called out in the CMS criteria, and we can incorporate with our IT alerting solution. We can integrate with some of your systems so that you're able to monitor those and make sure that they're online and fix issues if they go offline. And then another important piece of the CMS criteria is the ability to communicate with the surrounding community in whatever language that whatever language that is common in that community. And with our templates and with our translation software, we allow you the ability to do that. Really quick, we can run a gap analysis to see kind of where you are, where you need to be, and how you can get there in terms of CMS. So we do welcome you to request that gap analysis. We'd be happy to kind of sit down with you around that. So with that, let's get to some of the questions. So again, you can ask your questions via the Q&A, but let me bring these up now. I know one question that came in prior, Dr. Goldman, is just how long should people take to run their tabletop exercises? What is the kind of a time that they should allot for it?
Yeah, I would say between 2 and 4 hours. The more time you can get, the better off you are. But 4 hours for tabletop max, maybe 3, minimum 2. You want to get people up and running and thinking about what's going on.
Sounds good. One thing that I'll go ahead and answer this now. I mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar, but we have recorded today's webinar, so we will be providing this recording. We'll email it out to everybody who registered later this week. So it looks like there was a lot of questions about that. I think that's an indication of the enthusiasm for the topic. So do look for that later this week.
Someone said, who doesn't like ice cream? We can appreciate that.
Yep. So let's see here. What other questions have come in? So again, please submit your questions via the GoToWebinar. But
someone said, I'm having trouble getting management involved. Everyone does. And what you have to do is do the carrots and sticks. The sticks it's the law, so they need to participate. And the carrots are, this is good for the hospital, it's good for response, it's good training, it's good everything. We're only asking, 2 to 4 hours twice a year to meet the law and to improve hospital response and to get people to coordinate. Once people go through a drill, I guarantee the light bulb goes off and they will understand and they won't have any problems after that. The toughest one will be the first one.
Okay.
Another question, is that your Porsche? No, it's not. It's my son's. Thank you very much.
So actually I have 2 questions kind of right here about the sharing of information when requested by law enforcement. Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the kind of the details around that?
Yeah. Well, again, I pulled that from the HIPAA laws, and what you need to do is bring this up during your drill and let HR and your general counsel talk it through. If you can do the research ahead of time, that's fantastic. So when you do the drill, you'll have the right answer. But this is a topic that it's going to come up, especially in a person-to-person situation. How much information can we release? One of the poll answers was redacted information. I just made that up, but a lot of you said, yeah, let's do that. Well, who's going to redact what? And so that becomes a ball of wax in and of itself. So again, talk to your legal people, cite the precedents that we have here, and go for it. But make it a learning experience.
So I have a question here, and sorry, I'm trying to get through these quickly because we're technically over, but I want to try to answer as many as possible. Using the terms drill and exercise interchangeably. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I tend to do that. To me, drill is just within a room, nobody outside the room, or it's a skill like how to be a leader, how to be a spokesperson, how to take apart a pump. So I consider it a drill. To me, an exercise is people outside the room, people like in the police department, working with you, communicating outside the drill room or the command center to talk with them and get them involved. So I tend to use drill and exercise interchangeably. Technically, it's not so. A drill is a much smaller event with fewer people, limited scope, where exercise is much larger, a lot of people, and a larger scope.
Does so here's a question. Does an IT-specific tabletop fulfill the CMS requirement?
I don't believe so. I'm not an expert in that part of it, but I don't think so at all. So I would not do that.
Okay. Can our active drill and our tabletop drill be on the same type of topic?
Yeah, I don't see why not. That's an interesting question. I would not. I would make them two separate topics because otherwise people will come up with the same response. They won't learn anything. So do a topic for your tabletop and do a different topic for your exercise and let people learn. So theoretically it could, but I would not do that.
We have a lot of people, again, asking for this this content after the fact. So yes, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar later this week, so please do look for that. I know we're over now, and we've gotten to a lot of these questions. A lot of them are sort of around that.
Feel free to email me with questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Not a problem.
All right, so if anybody has any last-minute questions, we'll take them now. Again, I apologize for going a little bit over. If not, thank you, everybody, for attending today's webinar. Look for the recording to be sent out later this week. And everybody, good luck with your tabletop exercises.